Welcome to the West Wing Week, your guide to everything that's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and beyond. This week, the Vice President Dr. Biden wrapped up a trip to India and Singapore. The President announced a grand bargain for middle-class jobs. Welcomed the Huskies and the Giants to the White House, as well as the American Legion Boys and Girls Nation, the President of Yemen, and civil rights leaders. He also marked the 60th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice. That's July 26th to August 1st, or let us be awed
by their shining deeds.
On Friday, the President welcomed members of the American Legion Girls and Boys Nation to the White House, where he got a little practice being sung to and began the countdown to his 52nd birthday. On Saturday, the President spoke at a ceremony to pay tribute to the 60th anniversary of the end of the Korean War. He honored veterans and their families at the Korean War Memorial on the National Mall by calling on every American to reflect on the service and sacrifice of those who fought in what has been called the Forgotten War.
In our hurried lives, let us pause. Let us listen. Let these veterans carry us back to the days of their youth, and let us be awed by their shining deeds.
Monday morning, the Vice President Dr. Jill Biden returned from a trip that took them around the world in 8 days. Let's board the plane with the VP and Dr. Biden as they travel to India and Singapore. The Vice President and Dr. Biden landed in New Delhi, India, and went directly to Gandhi Smriti, the house where Mahatma Gandhi spent the final months of his life. They're given a personal tour by Gandhi's granddaughter, who now helps run the house as a museum. The next morning in Agra, Dr. Jill Biden visited a USAID-funded program in Kachpura village, one of 430 slums in Agra that focuses on major community challenges like public health and child development. From there, she stopped by to glimpse the Taj Mahal, the iconic masterpiece of craftsmanship and architecture that has become a symbol of India worldwide. That evening, after a day of bilateral meetings with India's leaders, the Vice President spoke at a dinner hosted by his Indian counterpart, Vice President Hamid Ansari, before departing for Mumbai. In Mumbai, the Vice President spoke on the 21st century partnership between India and the United States at the Bombay Stock Exchange. He then held a roundtable with business leaders before traveling across the city to visit the American consulate. The next day, the Vice President visited the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and toured the labs and campus of the institution. Along the way, he talked science, education, and culture with the wonderfully diverse group of students. The Vice President then left the fabled subcontinent of India and headed for the bright lights of Singapore. In Singapore, the Vice President and Dr. Biden toured the Botanic Gardens, where they attended an orchid naming ceremony in their honor, before the Vice President made a local lunchtime stop. Meanwhile, Dr. Biden read Make Way for Ducklings to children at the National Library Board as part of a national initiative to promote and encourage a love of reading. The Vice President then held meetings with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan, as well as the Prime Minister, President, and First Lady of Singapore. He then toured and spoke at both American airplane engine company Pratt & Whitney and the USS Freedom, which was the first United States Navy littoral combat ship to be commissioned. The Vice President then traveled back in time as he crossed the international dateline en route to Honolulu, Hawaii, arriving after 17 hours of travel and yet somehow earlier in the day than when he'd left. There, the Vice President spent time with troops and their families at a barbecue and field day at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam. After touching down in America's 50th state, the Vice President Dr. Biden returned to Washington, completing their 8-day trip around the world. Meanwhile, back in time and back at the White House, the President spent his Monday morning sitting down with a coalition of civil rights leaders and senior officials to emphasize his commitment to protecting the constitutionally guaranteed voting rights of every American.
Whether you're north, south, east, west, everybody should vote.
Then, the President met with the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, before joining Mays' former team on the South Lawn to celebrate the San Francisco Giants' 2012 World Series championship.
We wish you all the best in your current term as you work so hard to move the country forward. We appreciate all your efforts.
On Tuesday, the President traveled to Chattanooga, Tennessee to visit an Amazon fulfillment center, where he got a tour of the cutting-edge facility, met with some of the line workers, and announced a plan that would simplify the tax code for businesses and make investments necessary to create middle-class jobs.
We can't lose sight of our North Star. We can't allow an impasse over long-term fiscal challenges to distract us from what the middle class needs right now. If folks in Washington really want a grand bargain, how about a grand bargain for middle class jobs? How about a grand bargain for middle class jobs?
On Wednesday, the President traveled to Capitol Hill to meet with the House and Senate Democratic caucuses to discuss the economy, immigration, and Obamacare as Congress heads into its summer recess. Then, the president hosted the 2013 NCAA champion UConn Lady Huskies at the White House, where he spoke of last year's championship and a personal challenge of his own.
I have to confess that my bracketology needs some work. So somebody back there's like,
On Thursday, the president attended the swearing-in ceremony of his new EPA chief, Gina McCarthy. Then, the president sat down with President Hadi of Yemen to discuss efforts to enhance democratic governance and further support economic development in Yemen, as well as strengthen our counterterrorism partnership, including ongoing efforts to close the prison at Guantanamo Bay. To find out more information on any of these circumnavigational topics or to see complete videos of these events, go to whitehouse.gov. And thanks again for checking out your West Wing Week.
Don't cry now. You make me feel bad.
Thank you. Very exciting.
There you go.
Thank you.